In another video, I talked about watershed moments in my 45-year career. These are my story videos, as I promised, the ones that I think are important to me. I had another watershed moment in Buffalo. I don't remember the years. Someone out there could probably tell me the years when our local hero, Billy Sheehan, the famous rock bass player, who I had seen playing the clubs, since I was 18, playing with the band Talus. I've never met Billy, strangely. We know of each other, I'm told, but I never met him face-to-face. Maybe we'll one day. But I saw him play in the clubs, and he got the gig, finally, with David Lee Roth. When David Lee Roth left Van Halen, Talus had been an opening act for Van Halen on different legs of different tours, and they knew of Billy, who was this major talent, virtuosic bass player. If you haven't checked out Billy, check him out. He's kind of rock royalty as far as bass players go. We're very proud to have him been from Buffalo, where I'm from as well. And so all the local guys went to see our hometown hero, Billy Sheehan, play the big hockey arena, Memorial Auditorium at the time, now torn down. It's a big, 26,000 people there to see David Lee Roth with our buddy Billy Sheehan on the bass. And David Lee Roth was his band, and Steve Vai was on guitar. So another rock royalty, right? So Steve Vai and Billy are the virtuosos of virtuosos. David Lee Roth announced them as the Rolls Royce of bands. And they did this entertaining shtick in the middle of the show where Steve Vai would play a riff and Billy Sheehan would play the same riff on the bass, and they would go back and forth and try and stop each other and all these crazy things like they're competing. And I realized, here I am as a very serious bass player at this point. I know a lot of you come here for violin stuff. Violin's my main instrument now, but I was a very serious bass player. That's another part of my story. I was totally following in the footsteps of Jaco Pastorius. I learned every riff he ever had, and even looked like him, was mistaken for him one time in New York City. He had the same hair, the same bony Aryan head, and the same bass. And so I was totally that Jaco thing. And here I am, all about the virtuosity thing and following Billy Sheehan on the stage. But I realized in a hockey arena, it's a rumbling mess for the most part, the sound is. If you've ever been to a great big concert like that, the sound is never good, especially for the bass. It just rumbles around. Steve Vai played a guitar riff, you could hear every note. And Billy Sheehan, no matter how good he was, he could play the same exact things, and his wow wasn't that impressive, but really, you could barely tell what he was playing. I could, because I was following his fingers even from the nosebleed section that I was in. But I realized, man, bass is just not sonically a good solo instrument unless you're in small clubs or small settings. No matter how great Billy Sheehan is, the greatest rock bass player in the world, some people call him, no matter how talented he is, can do all this two-handed tapping and play four-part Bach chorales while the bass is sitting on the floor, all these crazy things we've seen him do. The bass just sucks as a solo instrument in a hockey arena. And it's like, it was a watershed moment for me. It's like, oh, it was disappointing, but I realized, okay, if I want to be as good as Billy, or as known as Billy, it's never going to happen sonically the way I want if I'm going to be on some huge rock tour in hockey arenas. I felt not sorry for him. It was like, wow, it is what it is. And from that point, I realized maybe bass is not the best choice for me. And from that point on, I started morphing to other instruments and taking a little more seriously my violin. Now, I'd always jammed a little bit on the violin. Before that, I'd play one song and a ballad in a rock band or something, and I'm back to the bass. And it was usually never a very satisfying experience because, it takes a couple times to get tunes to get your sound together and the right volume and comfortable. And usually it was one song and then back to the bass. And the person who was playing bass while I was playing the violin was never as good, It was never comforting and satisfying. So I realized, well, maybe, the other instruments, guitar and violin, should be my main thing, and I'll be unique. And we already have one Billy Sheehan. We don't need two, or, don't need another Jaco. I'd already kind of been tarnished by that. And maybe I've taken this Jaco thing too far. It was a watershed moment for me, and sometimes you hit those. When you're at the peak of seeing some greatness, you realize it's maybe not as great as you thought it was. And so at that point, it wasn't long after that, I really focused on being a jazz fusion violinist and applying all the technique that I had learned as a classical violinist into that world, and all the experience of improvisation and jazz studies on guitar and stuff to that instrument. And that's a big part of that watershed moment where I went over the crest, and then it was another whole ride I've been on for many decades. So you never know where these things will come from, but pay attention in life the best you can.